Have you ever pulled out a $20 bill and wondered why it's actually worth $20? I mean, it's just paper, right? Fancy paper with some ink and a dead president's face on it. But you can trade that piece of paper for a pizza, or part of a tank of gas, or an hour of someone's labor. Why does everyone just agree that this paper has value? Here at Simple Money, we've spent way too much time thinking about this question, and what we've discovered is kind of wild. The answer isn't what they taught you in school. It's not backed by gold anymore. It's not guaranteed by some vault full of treasure. The truth is way more interesting, and honestly, a little bit unsettling. Today, I'm going to reveal who actually decides what your money is worth, and why understanding this might be the most important financial lesson you never learned. Here's what's really happening. Most people think money has some inherent fixed value, like it's real in the same way a car is real or a house is real. You work 40 hours. You get paid, let's say, $800. That money feels solid, concrete, real. But here's the thing nobody talks about. That $800 doesn't have a fixed value. It's not like a rock that weighs exactly 800 grams no matter what. The value of your money is changing constantly, every single day, every single hour, actually. Sometimes slowly, sometimes dramatically. And most people don't notice until it's too late, until their rent goes up, until groceries cost $50 more per week, until that vacation they've been saving for suddenly costs twice as much. Then they think, wait, what happened? I'm making the same money, I'm working just as hard, but somehow I can afford less. This is the invisible theft that happens when you don't understand who's really controlling the value of your money and why they make the decisions they do. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The value of your money isn't determined by how hard you work. It's not determined by what you think it should be worth. It's determined by a system that most people don't understand and forces that are often working against your best interests. So let me break down the 4 powers that actually decide what your money is worth and why each one matters more than you think. The first power is what I call the printing press problem. And this is where things get weird. Your government, through its central bank, has the power to create money out of thin air. Literally. They don't need to mine gold or grow crops or build anything. They just decide to create more money. And poof, it exists. In the United States, that's the Federal Reserve. In Europe, it's the European Central Bank. Every country has some version of this. Now, you might think, well, that sounds great. If we need more money, just print more. Problem solved, right? Not quite. Here's what happens when you increase the amount of money without increasing the actual goods and services in an economy. Each individual dollar becomes worth less. Think about it like this. Imagine there are 100 people on an island, and there are 100 pizzas available, and everyone has $10. Simple math. Each pizza costs $10. Supply and demand are balanced. Now imagine the island's government prints more money. Suddenly everyone has $20, but there are still only 100 pizzas. What happens? The pizza sellers raise their prices because people have more money to spend. So pizzas now cost $20. Everyone has twice as much money, but they can buy the exact same amount of stuff. That's inflation, and it's a direct result of creating more money without creating more value. The Federal Reserve did this on a massive scale during the 2008 financial crisis, and again during the pandemic in 2020 and 2021. They created trillions of dollars, not millions, trillions. And what happened? Your dollars became worth less. Not worthless, but worth less. Each one could buy less stuff than before. This is why your grandparents could buy a house for $30,000, and why a candy bar used to cost a nickel. It's not that houses and candy bars became more valuable, it's that dollars became less valuable, because there are way more of them now than there used to be. The second power is what I call the confidence game. And this one's a little trippy because it's entirely psychological. Money only works if people believe it works. That's it. That's the whole game. A dollar bill has value because you believe I'll accept it. And I believe the grocery store will accept it. And the grocery store believes their suppliers will accept it. It's a shared delusion, but a useful one. Think about what happened in Zimbabwe in the late 2000s. Their government printed so much money that people lost confidence in it completely. A loaf of bread cost millions of Zimbabwe dollars, then billions, then trillions. Not because bread became more valuable, but because their currency became worthless, because nobody trusted it anymore. People started using US dollars instead, or South African rand, or they just bartered, trading goods directly without money at all. The Zimbabwe dollar still existed. The government said it had value. But when people stopped believing that, it became just expensive toilet paper. This is why governments and central banks care so much about managing expectations, about looking stable and credible. Because the moment people lose confidence in a currency, it's game over. And here's what makes this particularly insidious. Your belief in money isn't just about trust, it's about habit and momentum. You accept dollars because everyone else accepts dollars. And everyone else accepts dollars because you accept dollars. It's a self-reinforcing loop until it's not. This is why financial crises are so dangerous, not because the money itself changes, but because confidence evaporates. And when confidence goes, so does value. The third power is the supply and demand dance. And this is where it gets really interesting because it's not just about your currency, it's about all currencies competing against each other. Your dollar isn't just worth a certain amount of stuff, it's worth a certain amount of euros, or yen, or pounds, or pesos. And that exchange rate is constantly changing based on supply and demand. If lots of people want to buy US dollars, the dollar becomes more valuable compared to other currencies. If people are trying to sell dollars and buy euros, the dollar becomes less valuable. Why would this happen? Lots of reasons. Maybe the US economy is doing well and investors want to put their money in US stocks. So they need dollars to do that. Dollar demand goes up, dollar value goes up. Maybe interest rates are higher in Europe, so investors sell dollars to buy euros to invest in European bonds. Dollar demand goes down, dollar value goes down. Maybe there's political instability somewhere, so people buy dollars as a safe haven. Dollar value goes up. This matters way more than most people realize. When your currency is strong compared to others, imports become cheaper. That vacation to Europe is more affordable. That Japanese car costs less. When your currency is weak, imports become expensive. And if your country imports a lot of stuff, that means inflation. Everything costs more. But here's the twist. Governments sometimes want a weaker currency. Why? Because it makes their exports cheaper, which helps their domestic businesses sell more stuff to other countries. So there's this constant dance, this balancing act between different countries trying to manage their currency values to benefit their economies, and you're caught in the middle of it, whether you know it or not. The fourth power, and this is the one that actually matters most in the long run, is what I call the productivity anchor. This is the only force that actually creates real value instead of just shuffling it around. At the end of the day, money is just a tool for exchanging goods and services. The real question is, how much actual stuff can the economy produce? If productivity goes up, if we can make more things with less effort, that creates real value, and that can actually make everyone wealthier. Think about it. A farmer 100 years ago could grow enough food for maybe 10 people. With modern tractors and fertilizers and technology, one farmer can grow enough food for 100 people. That's real wealth creation. That's real value. When productivity increases, when we get better at making stuff, the economy grows. And in theory, everyone benefits. But here's where it gets complicated. If productivity increases but the money supply increases even faster, you still get inflation, because there's more money chasing goods than there are goods to buy. If productivity stays flat but the money supply increases, you definitely get inflation. The ideal situation is when productivity and money supply grow at roughly the same rate, then prices stay stable and everyone's wealth actually increases. But that almost never happens perfectly, because the people controlling the money supply are making decisions based on incomplete information, and often based on political pressure. They're trying to thread a needle, print enough money to keep the economy moving, but not so much that it causes runaway inflation. Sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it spectacularly wrong, and you feel the consequences in your grocery bill, your rent, your paycheck's purchasing power. Now, here's what nobody wants to admit. These four powers, they're not neutral, they're not operating in your best interest. The government has an incentive to create more money because it lets them spend more without raising taxes. They can fund programs, fight wars, bail out banks, all without the political cost of asking citizens for more money directly. But that creation of money dilutes the value of the money you already have. It's a hidden tax, a stealth transfer of wealth from savers to the government. The confidence game benefits those who understand it. The wealthy diversify out of cash into assets. Real estate, stocks, gold, things that hold value even when currency doesn't. The average person keeps their wealth in a savings account earning 1% interest while inflation runs at 7%. They're losing purchasing power every single year. The supply and demand dance benefits big players, corporations that can move money between countries, hedge funds that can bet on currency movements, not the person working a regular job and getting paid in dollars. And productivity growth, it should benefit everyone. But the gains from productivity have been increasingly captured by capital owners, not workers. Wages have been mostly flat for decades when adjusted for inflation, but corporate profits have soared because productivity gains went to shareholders, not employees. This is the uncomfortable truth. The value of your money is determined by systems that you have very little control over, and those systems often work against you. Let me tell you about Derek. Derek is 45 years old, works in IT, makes about $85,000 a year. For the last 20 years, Derek's been doing what everyone told him to do. He keeps his emergency fund in a savings account, about $30,000, earning basically nothing in interest. He's been saving for retirement, putting money in his 401k, but conservatively, mostly in bonds and stable value funds because he doesn't want to risk losing money in the stock market. Derek's been working at the same company for 15 years. He's gotten raises about 2 to 3% per year. He feels like he's being responsible, playing it safe, doing everything right. But here's what Derek doesn't realize. Inflation over the last 20 years has averaged about 3% per year, some years more, some years less. Those 2 to 3% raises, they're barely keeping up with inflation. His real purchasing power hasn't increased at all. That $30,000 in his savings account, it's lost about 40% of its purchasing power. It can buy maybe $18,000 worth of what it could buy 20 years ago. His conservative retirement investments, they've been eaten alive by inflation, growing at 2 to 4% per year while his money loses 3% per year to inflation. He's barely treading water. Derek worked hard for 20 years, saved diligently, did everything he was supposed to do, but because he didn't understand who controls the value of money and how, he's actually getting poorer, not on paper, but in real terms, in what his money can actually buy. Now let me tell you about Maya. Maya is also 45, also works in tech, makes about the same as Derek. But 10 years ago, Maya started learning about monetary policy, about inflation, about how money actually works. She keeps an emergency fund, but only 6 months of expenses, about $25,000. The rest of her cash, she's not just letting it sit there. Maya invests aggressively, mostly in stock index funds, some in real estate. She understands that over long time periods, these assets tend to grow faster than inflation. When she got a raise, she didn't just accept the 3%. She looked at inflation rates. She researched what people in her role were making at other companies. She job hopped strategically, moving to new companies every 3 to 4 years, each time negotiating a 10 to 20% increase. Over 10 years, while Derek's salary went from $70,000 to $85,000, Maya's went from $70,000 to $130,000, not because she's smarter than Derek, but because she understood that staying in one place while the value of money erodes is a losing strategy. Maya's retirement account has grown substantially, not just from her contributions, but because her investments in stocks have significantly outpaced inflation. She bought a small rental property 5 years ago. The rent covers the mortgage, the property value has increased, and she's paying off the mortgage with increasingly cheaper dollars. Maya didn't have any special advantages. She just understood how money works, and she positioned herself accordingly. Here's what most people don't realize. The question isn't just who decides the value of money. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Because once you understand that your money's value is constantly being eroded by forces outside your control, you have two choices. You can ignore it, keep doing what Derek did, save in cash, take your small raises, hope everything works out, or you can adapt like Maya did. The people who build real wealth understand that holding cash is a losing game in the long run. Cash is a tool for transactions, not for storing value. Real wealth is stored in assets that grow faster than inflation: stocks, real estate, businesses, skills that command higher wages. The difference between Derek and Maya wasn't intelligence, it wasn't luck, it wasn't even starting capital. It was understanding that the value of money is not fixed. That inflation is not just some abstract economic concept, it's a real force that's constantly eroding your purchasing power. And that if you're not actively protecting yourself against it, you're falling behind. Even if your bank account balance keeps going up, this might blow your mind, but in some ways, we're all on that island with the pizzas. The government keeps printing more money, more dollars in circulation, but the amount of goods and services doesn't increase nearly as fast. So prices go up, your dollars buy less, and if you're just holding cash, you're the one getting squeezed. The wealthy understand this instinctively. That's why they don't hold much cash. They hold assets, things that appreciate as the money supply increases. So who decides the value of money? Four powers: the printing press problem, the confidence game, the supply and demand dance, and the productivity anchor. Central banks that can create money at will, collective belief that gives money its value, global markets where currencies compete, and economic productivity that creates real value. These forces are always at work, always pushing and pulling, always changing what your dollars can actually buy. But here's what gives me hope. Once you understand these forces, you can position yourself accordingly. You can stop being a passive victim of inflation and start making strategic decisions that protect your wealth. You can minimize your cash holdings, invest in assets that appreciate, negotiate for raises that actually beat inflation, build skills that increase your value in the marketplace. None of this is secret knowledge. It's not complicated. It's just not what most people are taught. Most people are taught to save money, to be conservative, to play it safe, but playing it safe in a system where the value of money is constantly eroding, that's not safe at all. That's a guaranteed way to fall behind. The question isn't whether the value of money will keep changing, it will. The system guarantees it. The question is, will you understand how it works? And will you position yourself to benefit from that understanding rather than be victimized by your ignorance? Your money is already losing value every single day. The only question is, what are you going to do about it?